be, so I think at this point we're probably already live. It's just setting everything up. All right, here we are. All right.
So we're live. I have the link.
So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If anyone is joining us live, can you, Ian, is there a way to see how many people are there?
Yes, but no one is live yet.
I'm like, what should I be saying?
It's an echo.
Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, cool.
Hello.
Nice job. Okay, cool. So in about 9 minutes, we'll switch over into the broadcast room. And we'll just welcome people and let them know that we'll be starting shortly.
How many people sign up for the webinar?
We had over 6,000 people registered. Yeah, a lot of people. We have 500 seats though, so we're expecting it to be full.
But the live stream they can attend, right? The YouTube. Yeah.
Exactly.
So we'll send them there.
And I actually see like a live on YouTube little thing on the side panel too. View stream on YouTube. Cool. Oh, there's actually, I could copy the streaming link too, Ian. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I already have it.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm going to update our generic email as well that you wrote with that
Amazing. Link. Thank you. Okay, Valeria, I got your message. Perfect.
It's kind of exciting.
It is. It really is. Valeria, have you been doing presentations during this time? Like a lot of virtual trainings, or how's that going for you?
I do, yeah, I do training, yes, Scam Alliance training classes. I've been doing quite a few, yeah, several. So I'm comfortable with the Zoom and the whole setup. I've been doing also some webinars in the in recent months. So yeah.
Are you teaching CSPO courses or what's
CSM and CSPO? Yes.
Both of them. Awesome.
Yeah.
Which is actually really cool. We might talk to Valerio regarding the PI, product owner PI.
Fantastic. Yeah, we definitely have, like we've heard from our community that they want resources for product owners, and something like that I think would be really useful. Ian actually has his CSPO. I have my CSM. So we got a mix on our team.
Nice, nice. How long have you been with the Scam Alliance?
We're both very new, actually. I started January 6th.
Just before the pandemic started.
Okay, I started at the end of February, and I was in our office for I think about 3 or 4 weeks before we went work remote.
Yeah, it was.
That's funny.
Good timing to get employment. That was very lucky, but just yeah, not a lot of opportunity to like meet everyone in person and like experience all that like team bonding stuff face to face. But I think we've done a good job keeping the team like connected virtually.
Got it. Jorgen, you are in Norway, right?
That's right, Oslo.
And Norway has not gone crazy like Sweden, like
not quite as crazy as Sweden, but they've been talking about trying to open up a little bit again. And around mid-July, I think they will start opening up to other countries. At this point, it's relatively hard. Like every time you try to go inside Norway now from outside, you have to go into quarantine. But I think they're trying to change that from the mid-July. But it's so uncertain. You know, suddenly you feel like you have control over this, and then suddenly you see a flare up. And so I sympathize with the authorities. It's not easy to give direction and certainty. No, it's not at all.
No.
So
it's Ali. I just want to make sure we are going to be recording this.
Yep, we will be, and yes, we will be. I was just like
asking. Looks like we are live already on YouTube. That's what it says on the screen.
Yeah, we're live in the broadcast room. If we want, I mean, we could move over, but attendees will like, we probably shouldn't have like background conversation at that point. We'll just be quiet.
Yeah.
So it's up to you all if you
Yeah.
want to.
And just so you know, we are live on YouTube. So hello to YouTube streamers. We now have 9 people watching, which is very exciting. Welcome. We will be switching and starting over in just about 10 minutes.
Hello.
So it's up to you two. If you two would like to go ahead and move over into the broadcast room, we can, or we can wait a little bit. It's up to you.
I'll leave it to you, Valerio. You decide.
We can put up the slide, the main slide, title slide, so people join and they see the right place. They're in the right place. What do you think?
Perfect.
Good idea.
Okay. So is that coming through?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks great on YouTube too. This is wonderful.
So this is one of a series of webinars that the Scrum Alliance is organizing, right? Okay. What is the frequency? When is the next one?
The next one's July 14th. So we've been doing them at a pace of about every 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of cool topics coming up too. So try to keep it diverse and interesting.
What's coming up? What's the next one?
The next one is around high-performing team behaviors. So it's looking at the science around what it means to be high-performing teams, like core protocols, psychological safety, growth mindset, those kind of things, and being very concrete around what kind of patterns and what kind of behaviors tend to lead to high performance.
Very nice. And are you comparative agility? Are you partnering with Scrum Alliance for that webinar as well?
That is right. It's part of the continuous improvement series.
Awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
Okay. Well, I say let's go ahead and move into the broadcast room. I'm going to hit broadcast. Once we're over there, I'll welcome everyone and we'll start the recording. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. We'll be starting in about 7 minutes. Hi, everyone. For those joining us, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll be starting in about 3 minutes. I'm curious where you all are from, if you'd like to share your location in the chat. Ooh, that's moving fast. Awesome.
Definitely worldwide.
Yeah, we've got representation from all over. It's so cool to see all those cities scrolling through. Wow. I saw Denver, Colorado. I don't know if that's someone from the Scrum Alliance team, but that's where we're based out of, so. All right, we'll give it 1 more minute and then we'll go ahead and start. All right. Presenters, how do you feel? Ready to go?
All good.
All
All
right.
good.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We're 1 o'clock. There we go. Right on time, and we're very excited. We have full capacity today, so about 500 attendees are on with us today. So we're so glad that you could join us. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Sally Poprish. I'm an education coordinator with Scrum Alliance. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. Oh, actually, I have to hit record. Thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar, Adopting a Tiramisu Mindset to Rapidly Build Products and Deliver Value. In this session, we'll discuss practical ways to adopt a mindset that's focused on developing and launching minimum viable products, reducing investment risks, and delivering value faster. This is the second webinar in the Continuous Improvement series, where presenters share their expertise and highlight tools available to Scrum Alliance certificate holders through comparative agility. A few items before we get started. All webinars will be in listen-only mode. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. So please use the question chat box to submit your questions, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Scrum Alliance website in the coming days. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone that completed the pre-webinar assessment. We've reviewed those results, and Jorgen will be reviewing those with you this morning or this afternoon. And will be, Valerio has used those responses to kind of dictate the information that he'll be sharing today. So now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jorgen Hasselberg and Valerio Zanini. Jorgen is the author of Unlocking Agility and co-founder of Comparative Agility, a leading agile assessment and continuous improvement platform. He will be sharing about the comparative agility tools that are available to Scrum Alliance certificate holders. Valerio Zanini is a certified Scrum trainer, a SAFe program consultant, and a certified product innovation trainer. He has 2 decades of product development experience in a variety of organizations. He is the author of Deliver Great Products That Customers Love and the founder of Spark Engine, a training and certification program in product innovation. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that, Solly. And I will not take much time here. The main man of the hour is Valerio, so we'll go straight over to him. But first, I do want to let you guys know that you do have a benefit. Those of you who are a Scrum Alliance certificate, you get a free subscription to Comparative Agility. So I just highly encourage you to go to your dashboard on Scrum Alliance, sign up that right away. If you do that, sign up, activate your membership, you have a free subscription. If you are a CSP and above, you get a business subscription, which is about $699 a year. So that's a nice benefit. But what we're going to do now, if you don't mind, Valerio, we're going to go live. And we're going to go straight and check out the results from the survey that you took. There was a number of you who took the survey, and I hope you can all see the screen at this point. And what we see here is that there's about 618 people who took this survey. And what we see here is overall, you can tell that there's a couple of issues around delivery, perhaps product culture. We can look at this data a little bit deeper and go into the discovery part. See that a couple of things kind of stand out in a negative way. Sometimes is some things are a little bit more positive. We can see that. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Before I introduce, the Q&A box is actually blocking the diagram. Do you mind Xing out of that?
I don't. I'm not sure if I actually have the Q&A box. I don't see that myself.
We are good to go.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I couldn't see the Q&A box myself. So part of what we're seeing here is that if you think about what scores really high, the statements with the highest average, product details and requirements emerge over time. Product manager is available and accessible to provide context and answers. The target and segment user group for our product is well defined. These things score high right now, which is not surprising because most of you are probably pretty familiar with Scrum. So that's great. When you look at things where you are in high agreement, you see things like the addressable market is well defined, product details emerge over time. This is the same as you saw earlier. So we could see that there's a lot of not so much disconnects in these areas. But if we go and look at things where there is opportunities, here's where you see that people are indicating this are the challenges that we're dealing with right now. Here's one question, for instance. The developers frequently join the product managers in discovery and customer interviews. This is, again, the idea that development and product management is actually working together and together exploring what we're actually delivering. And what about this one here, design thinking? Do we utilize design thinking as part of how we develop our product? And the key success metrics. What metrics do we use to track the product's performance? These things are not very high. You can see the scores here are relatively low. If we look at things where people are very much disagreeing with each other, is things like this. There's only one product manager in charge for a product. And of course, design thinking. People are not on the same page there either. So what we're seeing here is that when it comes to the traditional Scrum items, we're on the same page. But when it comes to things that has to do with the exploration phase, the things that happen before we start development, before the product backlog and the sprint backlog is defined, that's when we have great challenges. This is why I think this is such an important session. This is why Valerio is here, and he's going to tell us about how we develop a Tiramisu mindset, which I think is an awesome term, and how we can create products that customers love. So take it away, Valerio. Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jorgen. Let's see if I can start this. Okay, is my screen coming through?
Yes.
Yes, awesome, perfect. Do a quick setup here, so we're ready to go. Perfect. Okay, thank you for that. And yes, let's talk about the Tiramisu, which is the most important topic for today. So quick background. Thank you, Solly, for the quick introduction. I'm the founder and CEO of 5D Vision, which is a consulting company. We do agile and product management training. I'm a certified Scrum trainer with the Scrum Alliance, and I've also published a book, Deliver Great Products That Customers Love. And actually, talking about that, we are going to do a raffle today. So at the end of the webinar, we will randomly select one of the participants, and we will ship you a copy of the book anywhere in the world, wherever you may be. So with that said, let's jump into the talk for today. So one first question I would like to put in your mind is this: can you build a cathedral using Agile? You know, one of those big cathedrals. Can we do that using Agile? Just giving a couple of seconds for you to think about that, and then continue with the story. And the story begins in 1546, actually in Italy, Rome. And that's the story of the construction of St. Peter's Cathedral. St. Peter's Cathedral is arguably the largest cathedral in the world today. And probably, as all of you know, to build a cathedral took many, many years, sometimes hundreds of years. Think about the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, Spain, which is not even yet finished. So long, long project. And in fact, they had spent 40 years just in the design phase. When this story begins, we're already 40 years into that story. And they were looking for the perfect design, something that the Pope was looking for to really represent the magnificence of the Christian church in Rome. And by looking at these different designs, they had hired one architect after the other, proposing all these different ideas, none of them able to satisfy the grand vision that the Pope has for this cathedral. So he fired all of them, and then he hired Antonio da Sangallo, the young. And Antonio had a different idea. Instead of drawing a plan, he said to the Pope, let me build a wooden model. This way I can put all the details, all the possible requirements into that wooden model. And once I'm done, you will see how the whole vision comes together. And if you approve it, then we will start building the church. So 7 years had passed, and the model was not ready yet. And the Pope was really not happy. And then one day he went to Antonio and said, you know, Antonio, this thing is not working. It's already like 47 years in total, and I haven't seen a single stone put in place to build the cathedral. So no more waterfall. And with that, the Pope fired Antonio and instead hired somebody else. He hired Michelangelo. Michelangelo already at the time had a reputation for innovation. He had built and he had created majestic art around Italy, and his reputation as an innovator preceded him. So the Pope thought he would be the perfect person to tackle this job. And in fact, Michelangelo, who was smart, he already had read the book from Eric Ries, The Lean Startup. So he knew that to build things, he had to use the Lean Startup cycle: build, measure, learn, and do this in repeated cycles. So he set off to do that, and he set off to do this in 7 days iterations. So he would build a clay prototype of whatever idea he had envisioned for the cathedral, or maybe a segment of that cathedral. He would build that with clay, then we'll go and get feedback from the Pope, and then pivot or continue depending on the feedback. And then you build the church incrementally, one step at a time, one iteration at a time, really showing the Pope the product increment, the result of his work, and then getting feedback from him along the way, so that sometimes things could be changed. Say, for example, he built a window that was too small. The Pope would say, you know, Michelangelo, I think I would like some more light. And in fact, several times Michelangelo took down pieces of the church and rebuilt them based on feedback. So today, we don't have actual plans for St. Peter's because Michelangelo didn't create plans, detailed plans. He worked in that 7 days iterations and built things in increments, much like we do in Scrum today. So can we say that Michelangelo was the first agilist 500 years ago? And bringing that to present date, we still use some of these techniques. For example, in car manufacturing, we use clay prototypes to create sometime in a one-to-one version of the car to look at the details and iterate on that before we draw the actual designs and create the actual car. So this is an example from Alfa Romeo, for example, still staying with the Italian team here. With that, that was a quick introduction. I would like to switch topic and start talking about the main, the primary responsibilities of a product manager. And when you think about this, when you really digest what are the primary responsibility of a product manager, I think we come down to 3. The first one is understanding the customer. So performing activities in discovery, understanding the customer problem, customer needs, and all the things that go along with that. The second one is drive product development, working with the development team, making sure we are building the right product, all these kind of things, providing context and vision and planning, all these kind of things. And then the third one is measure the outcomes. Our goal in the end is not to build a product, but it's actually to deliver value to the stakeholders, whether they are customers, the business, our own team. And to do that, we need to be able to measure the outcomes that we are delivering. So here are the 3 primary responsibilities of a product manager. I'm going to ask you to do a quick exercise. So if you have a piece of paper handy near you, I would like for you to grab a piece of paper and a pen and then draw 3 circles, like the 3 areas here. Draw 3 circles on that piece of paper. And then in each circle, put a number, 1 to 10. How much are you focused on each one of these areas? So 1 being very low, 10 being totally focused on that area, 1 to 10 for understand the customer, 1 to 10 for drive product development, and 1 to 10 for measure the outcomes. Draw that on your piece of paper. 3 different numbers, all the same numbers. I'll give you a second to do that. And now that you have that piece of paper, save it for the continuation of the discussion, because now we're going to talk about my favorite dessert. And if you've been to Italy, this is all over the place, right? Everywhere, especially in northern Italy, where this is from. So we are going to talk about the tiramisu. Why is the tiramisu important? Why is that? Well, let's look at that. In order to make a good tiramisu, it's actually not that easy. There are 3 main ingredients, and these 3 ingredients need to be well balanced. The first one is coffee, in particular espresso. The second one are the lady fingers. In Italian, they're called savoiardi. These are the biscuits that go inside the tiramisu. And then the third one is the mascarpone cheese. And I was playing around with this presentation with my daughter, and she said, yeah, I totally get it. Let me write that down for you. So she wrote this sticky, and she said, too much mascarpone, and then you get a mushy cake. If you put too much coffee, then it's soggy. And if you put too much cookie, then it's dry. So now you get it. In order to make a good tiramisu, these 3 elements need to be in balance with each other. And I think that is actually very relevant to the responsibilities of product manager. So when we go back here, these three responsibilities should be in balance for a product manager. So it's like a tiramisu. To make a good product manager, we need to have balance between these three activities. And when we don't, then things get a little bit out of whack. For example, sometimes, actually very often, I see that teams are focused this way. So yes, they may spend some time doing activities and discovery activities with customers, understanding the needs, understanding the problem space, but then quickly jump into product development. And whether that's planning, writing all the requirements, really setting on a good solution, and then spending weeks or months in building that until we are done with that. And then maybe sometime at the end, sometime during the development, we measure something. We get some feedback, we measure some metrics. Usually this happens at the end, and they could be too late. Now, not only this, but sometime when we ask to the teams, they say, oh, but we do agile. Yes, we do agile in development, but that's not what we are supposed to do. So for the rest of the presentation, let's look at how we can bring this into balance. And as Jorgen was mentioning, we asked all of you to do the assessment on product management and innovation on comparative agility. And three statements stood out for us in terms of having the lowest scores across the entire pool of participants from today, and also the highest divergence in terms of results. The first one is the developers frequently join the product managers in discovery and customer interviews. When I work with teams, I always actually most often see that the development team is somewhere hidden inside the office, and the only person that really interacts with the customers are the business people or the product manager. And then they act as proxy to provide context and details to the development team, really losing something in between. The second one is a team utilizes design thinking to develop solutions that are customer-centric. Design thinking is more about the mindset than the actual practices. And by adopting this mindset, we can better understand the customers. And also, sometimes we tend, as humans, we tend to jump to the first solution that we think works. Design thinking helps us to really keep the solution space open and to validate what is the right solution with our customers. So really making sure, reducing the risk and making sure that we can find the best solution to solve the problem. And then finally, key success metrics track the product performance and indeed outcomes. I often see this as an afterthought. We are not tracking the metrics during the development of the product, not even or during discovery, and sometimes not even at the end of that. And we lose the opportunity to really validate what we're doing. So let's look at details, some details here around these 3 points. And in particular, I would like to start sharing a story on this. So first of all, we've done some work, and the typical product development activities go through these 5 dimensions. Then we start with discovery, where we understand problem, needs, opportunities. We go into design, then we develop the product, we deploy that in the market, and we deliver the value to the customer. When we treat these as individual phases, we're really building a product in waterfall. Yes, we may adopt agile somewhere in between here, but if we treat these as individual phases, we are doing waterfall basically. Instead, what we should be looking at here is really measuring value throughout the process, all the way, starting from discovery. And design thinking is a great practice to help us do that. And also, instead of looking at this as one linear process, we should look at this into breaking down in several iterations. An example could be this: can we deploy an MVP in market, get some quick validation of the initial idea, the initial hypothesis, and so on, and then get back on the next iteration and release version 2.0 and then version 1.0 and continue the process this way. So much like Michelangelo was doing with the construction of St. Peter's, can we do this on rapid iterations and really deliver value as frequently as possible in the market? And yes, establishing feedback loops throughout the development process. So to help with this, we have developed this canvas that basically looks at different practices that product managers and teams can adopt at each of these in each of these dimensions, so that they can cover all the 5 dimensions without overlooking any one of these. And this is available for download. So if you want to take a screenshot or just snap a quick photo of the QR code, you can download that from the website. So now, having spoken about the 5 dimensions, so discover, design, develop, deploy, and deliver, I would like to ask you to do one quick exercise. So think about which one of these 5 dimensions you are more focused in your work, in your activities, and which one you are least focused. Where would you need some more support, for example? And write that in the chat. Which one are you more focused and which one are you weaker? So let me put that question here. If you can write that in the chat. We are seeing a chat storm with more than with 5,000 people participating on the webinar. Everybody participating on the chat here is a chat storm, which is part of that is the purpose of this and makes more fun, more interactive. Very cool. It's actually very interesting to look at all the answers. You can see there is a variety of different answers here, and that's awesome. It's great. And I want to do this exercise just to create awareness that we are, even as product manager, we tend to be focused more or maybe stronger in some of these dimensions than others. And maybe when we can spend some time in developing the ones we are weaker, we become more well-rounded product managers overall. So just to create some awareness here. Now let's move on and let me share a story. And this is a story of 2 teams in a organization in a big financial services company. 2 teams in 2 lines of business that independent from each other, that at some point in time, they were tasked to develop a new enterprise solution. This was built on Salesforce as an architecture. And the goal here was to replace an old and crappy enterprise tool that we had in the company at the time. The 2 lines of business, both of them wanted to replace this old crappy application, but they chose to work independently in 2 different teams. Now let me share what happened. So team one, I will call it the other business unit, started off by saying, yeah, we are agile. We are agile. We use Scrum in development. And they started looking at all the requirements that were coming from the old crappy, and yes, crappy is a technical term in this context. They were coming from the old crappy application. So they spent 6 months looking at that old application and really digging into that application and writing down everything that the application did. And once they were done with this long list of requirements, that basically became the product requirement document. The team got sign off from the leadership, and they set off to develop the new application, with all the same features and the same thing that the new one, the old one did before. So they went to the development team and said, okay, for several reasons, you have 1 year. We have a deadline, a business deadline we need to hit. You have 1 year to develop this. Here is the stack of requirements. Can you do that? And the answer was, yeah, okay, I think we can do that. We use Scrum. We will break down the work in 2-week increments. We basically do 26 sprints over a year, and we feel pretty good that by the end of the year, we should be fine. Now, you probably already know where this is going to end, but basically at the end of the year, only 50% of that application had been completed. And because they had to complete the whole thing, they could not release a partial thing in market, nothing could be delivered, nothing could be deployed. There was no way to get any feedback from anybody. So in a sense, they spent a year and they had a gigantic product increment that was useless. So now let's look at team 2. And this was my team. And we came to this job really new. We didn't know much about the old application. But one thing we said was, you know what, it is not worth really looking at rebuilding the old stuff. Why don't we take the opportunity here to build something new? Really go back to the customers and understand what they need. Maybe they need the whole feature set of the old application, that would be fine. Maybe they need something completely different. So let's focus on that. So we employ this mindset. We try to be balanced between the 3 different responsibilities: understand the customers, drive product development, and measure the outcomes. And we did this in rapid iterations, learning from the customers and the end users, building whatever we could build in a rapid iteration, measuring the outcomes, and repeating the cycle over and over again. So let's look at what we did. So in Discover, we did empathy interviews, observation, and prototype testing with our bankers. The bankers were the proxies to the customers. They were the main users to this application, both the old one and the future one. So we wanted to understand what the bankers really needed, not what the old application did, but what they needed. So we spent a few weeks conducting empathy interviews, observing the interaction between the bankers and the customers, sketching on paper some quick prototypes. Think about the clay prototypes from Michelangelo, and getting feedback from bankers and customers on just the ideas that we had. Then we started getting into the design, and we spent, again, some time doing, for example, design sprint. We did a big design sprint event. We put together some bankers, customers, some business people, and we created storyboards. With storyboards, we were, for the first time, able to visualize what the actual interaction between a customer and the banker was. Not something that we ideated on our own head or something that was based on the old application. We started drawing what the actual interaction between the banker and the customer was and what kind of problems they were facing. And with all of this information, we were able to start creating some prototypes of our application, the new one, and started testing this with some of these bankers, some of these customers. And these were paper-based prototypes, so really something to do very quickly with not much effort, just in a couple of days, and really get the validation very quickly. All of this was formalized in what we call the product journey map. Now, for us, this was quite big because we had 5 personas, and these 5 personas went through 7 different journeys in the way of interacting with the bankers. The journey map had 18 steps, and overall, it covered 15 feet in our office. So a long, big journey map. It took us some time to put this together, but once we had that, we had a clear visualization of what the MVP would look like. So we said, we're not going to build the whole thing. We said, what is the key hypothesis that we want to validate first? And we landed on a very important one that helped us, if validated, helped us really transform the way that our bankers interacted with customers. And so we said, okay, let's build just the feature set that helps us to validate that hypothesis. That became our MVP. And it was representing this product journey map. And by having the product journey map on the wall, I created a ton of alignment, a ton of transparency with everybody involved in the development effort, including stakeholders, including senior leadership, because every time we had a meeting, we actually held that meeting in that room. So any conversation about trade-offs and priorities and so on could be done on the actual board that you see here in the photo. Then we move on to development. And development, yes, we used Scrum in development, but more importantly than that, we said we want to do this in rapid iteration, really validate along the way and measure the results that we get. So almost every week, we had real tests with real bankers in our office. And you can see here that we use a lot of paper prototypes. Even before building something, we were writing the code, we would prototype something, get feedback from the users, and then we will build it in code. So really trying to iterate on the process as much as possible and quick as possible. And we finally got to build the MVP. And in fact, we launched that in 4.5 months. So in 4.5 months since the beginning, we were in production with an MVP. And later, this MVP grew, was expanded, grew, and so on. And this application was presented at Dreamforce, the annual Salesforce conference in 2017, as the largest Salesforce implementation in financial services to date. So it means that you can launch an MVP and still build a very big product. You just build it over time. So going back to the 5 dimensions, we were looking at all 5 dimensions, measuring value along the way with the key feedback from the customers. And in particular, we were looking at some key metrics here. So from the banker's point of view, we wanted to see, are the bankers actually using it? Because it's one thing to build a new application. The other one is actually see if they're using it. So we look at the number of customer profiles entered and those that were updated on subsequent visit, because this was the key hypothesis. Can we build this so that we can actually save the customer profiles? And we compared that to the average of the whole platform. So we had the baseline to compare that. And we actually validated that bankers loved using the new tool because it gave much more visibility into the customer interaction, the customer needs. And then on the customer side, we use more qualitative feedback, such as direct customer interviews. We also interviewed the bankers about the feedback that they got from the customers. And then more in general, the NPS score was an indicator for us. So we use these metrics throughout the project to validate the progress we are doing. So let's look at what are the lessons learned here. First of all, tiramisu. Tiramisu is good, is delicious. We got that, we love it. But more on that. We spoke about the need for balancing the different responsibilities of product manager, and in particular, the need to balance the time that we focus on the customers and understanding the customer needs, the time that we focus on building the product and working with the development team, and then measuring the outcomes. And really doing this in rapid iteration so that we can reduce the risk and deliver value as much as possible. We also look at how we can employ the 5 dimensions, again, in rapid iterations by building an MVP, then versions 2.0 versus 2.1 and so on, really breaking down a big project into smaller chunks that we focus first on the key hypotheses and measure the value that we deliver along the way. Now, how do we know if we are doing the right work, if we are doing things in the right way, if we even have the skill set to be able to do the work in the right way? Well, one tool that can help you is the program management and innovation assessment from Comparative Agility, the one that we use to prepare this talk, and the one that Jorgen presented at the beginning. You can use this tool to assess your own skill set, your team skill set, your organization skill set, identify gaps that you can then help uncover and develop additional expertise. And then finally, I would like to share that if you want to fill those gaps, we run advanced training for product innovation and for design thinking. We actually have 2 upcoming sessions. And for the participants in this webinar, we offer a 10% discount using the code that you can see here on the screen. So if you'd like to save a screenshot of this, please go ahead or to snap a photo. And then finally, here are my contact information. I'd be happy to stay in contact. Please connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And again, at the end of this speech, we will do a raffle and select a lucky winner for a copy of Deliver Great Products that Customers Love. That ends my talk, and I would like to pass the baton on to Jorgen for one additional conversation around the assessment, the comparative agility assessment.
Great, Valerio, thank you for that. I mean, you're really good at just giving us a taste, not just of the tiramisu, but just a taste of what you got. So we really are I'm hungry now for more product management. So thank you for that. That was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed the tiramisu analogy. And yes, it is late in Oslo, so yes, I am hungry right now, but thanks anyway. This is for those of you who are Scrum Alliance members. You can actually try this right now, and I think you should. I think this would be a really good exercise to do for your teams. Take advantage of this free service. Go to scrumalliance.org. You can see the link there, /dashboard. That's where you can activate your account. Once you go inside there, you can actually then check out the survey, take it with your team, have conversations around this. One thing that's really important here is to know that none of these surveys give you answers. What they do, though, is they help you have better conversations. And that's the whole point of this. We want to make these things clear. You want to make sure that we can have better conversations with people from across the organization. And I think that could be really useful. So that's all we had. I think Solly is going to join us. I think there will be some time for questions. So this should be exciting. I saw those some really good questions already.
Yes, Valerio and Jorgen, thank you both so much. That was a wonderful presentation. At this point, we'll go ahead and move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. I did see that there are a couple questions already submitted, but please feel free to leave those in the chat box if you haven't yet. I also wanted to share that if there are questions that we don't get to today, either submitted through Zoom or through YouTube streaming, Valerio will be writing a blog post for us that we'll be publishing later on after the webinar, and he'll be addressing some additional questions and key takeaways. So please check our website for that. And then we'll go ahead and jump into questions now. So the first question we had, it was during the comparative agility demo. There was a question of, are the ratings based on impact value?
Oh, yes, I guess I can speak to that real brief. This is so what you saw right there was not based on impact value. We have the ability to do that in other reports inside the tool, but what you saw there was purely 2 things. You saw the average and you saw the standard deviation. So you saw what the average score was with all these 600 people, and then you saw the level of coherence or the degree of commonality inside the data set. So yeah, we have that inside the tool, but that was not what you saw there.
Jorgen, you want to stop this screen share and show the dashboard?
The dashboard, yeah. Well, I'm not sure if that's going to work there now because we don't think we have enough data to show you. But I can give it a separate presentation on it. I think that's probably easier.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So the next question we have is: with our new reality, working virtually, how would you run these workshops virtually with no sticky notes, no paper, no pens, and no walls?
Yeah, actually, this new reality, I think, is it also created an opportunity because before we had distributed teams, and somehow the distributed team was always seen as the unusual team. Now that's becoming the norm. And there are many tools that we can use to do that. I've been quite successful in running similar exercises, similar conversation with my teams using Miro or Mural, two different tools. Basically, what they are digital whiteboards where you can use, you can put up a framework, and there could be a product journey map, could be a customer journey, could be a vision statement, could be a link canvas, any type of framework you can think about, and then use stickies in a collaborative exercise with the entire team to fill up that framework. So that's been quite effective, and I will continue using that regardless if we are distributed or in person.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tool. We use that a lot. There was a question of how many squads were there to build the MVP that you talked about? And was it for the 7 personas and 18 journeys each?
So here is the beauty of these things. When you focus on the key hypotheses that you want to solve for, sometimes you don't need a big development team. You need to put something together to be out there in market with something that works, that people can use, and they can give you feedback. So in this context, I actually had one squad. And no, we did not focus on all the 5 personas, 7 journeys. We did not focus at once on all of them. Again, going back to the key hypothesis we wanted to solve, we said, what can we do to solve this, to answer these hypotheses in the least amount of effort? So we focus, I think, was on 2 personas only and a few steps of the journey. But for us, answering that key hypothesis was key. Without that, the whole thing would fall apart. So that there was our focus. Great.
Next question is, I heard the term most marketable product or MMP recently. The definition I read didn't suggest to me that the mindset behind that MMP is customer focused. How does one ensure they maintain focus on the customer and not on sales?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point here, right? We need a tiramisu. That's how we do that. But jokes apart, I'm not that familiar with the most marketable product. I mean, there are many different MVP, MVF, MMP. You can make a ton of different acronyms. The point here is build a product in increments and try to really focus on the key hypothesis that delivers the most value to your customers, and if validated, allows you to have a successful product. And if not validated, kills your product. So you need to pivot. And you want to discover that as quickly as possible. Now, to do that, you need to sell the product, you need to work with sales, or you need to put that in the hands of customers in other ways. I don't think it really depends on the context, but the goal is to get validation as quick as possible on your product idea so you can keep building it, but you start off with a solid foundation.
Next question is, any ideas on how the tiramisu mindset could be applied to game development?
Oh, I'd be curious about that. Yeah. That's actually a very interesting question. I need to think about that. I don't see why it cannot be applied. The reality with game development, especially when we're looking at the big titles, is that you need to have a solid experience when you deploy the game in the market, because that experience makes or breaks the game. If gamers right up front don't like that game, they're gonna not put rave reviews, and you may lose the market. Now, it doesn't mean that you cannot build an initial version and then build incrementally on top of that. In fact, a lot of games today, they have the expansion packs, they have the new, I don't remember how they are called, but basically expansion packs, like when you add additional features and so on. So you can still go and validate that MVP market. You can also, while you build that game, you can still validate that with a set of beta testers, with a set of customers, users, and so on, while you build it. So don't wait until you have the full product, the working product, to get for customers, feedback from customers, but do that as you build it, using prototypes, using iteration, using sprint reviews. We use Scrum all the time, right? So sprint reviews is a great opportunity to get feedback every couple of weeks and learn from your customers.
The next question is, how can these be applied in terms of various business contexts?
I'd be curious to know more about this question. I'm not sure. So I think what we shared really applies to, can be applied to any business context, to any type of product. If you think about it, even to non-software products. And so that will be my answer, unless there is more details to that.
Yeah, so maybe we can get a little bit more information in the chat, or that could be one of the questions we follow up on later on. The next question is, how can we apply the 5 dimensions in an infrastructure context?
Interesting question too. I would like to have some more details here. So I think we are talking about, for example, building APIs, or building the infrastructure for a complex product that several teams depend on, and these kind of things. I think the same principles still apply. When we build this type of architecture and infrastructure, we still have customers. Now, the customers could be internal users from the organization, other squads, other teams. And we can do that in iterations. We can do that with rapid validation. And we can set up the right metrics to measure the value that we deliver.
Great. The next question is, how can the Scrum Master be an agent of change and help the product team to be more agile and create products in a more interactive way?
Oh, I really like this question, because often the role of the Scrum Master is misunderstood as being a sort of a secretary of the team, managing the busy work for the team. And that's not at all, not the goal of that role. Actually, I suggest the Scrum Masters I work with to not do any business work. Just do not do any work. Just let the other people in the team do the work. Instead, the Scrum Master role is an agent of change, as stated in this question, and is a coach to the team, developing team, and the product owner. So somehow they can help the product owner understand what different practices to use, maybe understand gaps and point them in the right direction, and maybe invite them to take, say, a Spark Engine training, so that the product owner can learn about design thinking, for example. Different things that the Scrum Master may be knowledgeable of or be aware of, to understand gaps and help the product owner become more effective.
Next question is there some standard for investment during the discovery phase?
I'm trying to understand the question. I'm not sure I have enough information there to answer that.
Cool. So maybe we can have a little more information in the chat box. And while that happens, we'll go ahead and move to the next one, which is, what do you do when an MVP has too many requirements?
Well, probably that's not an MVP.
What was that?
Probably that's not an MVP.
Ah.
So by definition, an MVP is the minimum viable product. And what I see is that teams often consider the MVP as version 1.0. Like, we want to build this product. How long does it take? What are all the requirements in there? The goal of the MVP is really to validate hypotheses. Think about that as an experiment. An experiment in market with your customers, you can get real feedback. So it's not a prototype, but really is based on to validate hypotheses. So when you have an MVP that is too big, I will start questioning what is the key hypothesis that we want to validate, what do we want to focus on. Maybe there are multiple MVPs there that we can build, more than one, that's fine, but really trying to be more focused on the key hypothesis here.
How important is it that the customer also understands the agile mindset and process in order to work with an agile team on an MVP?
I think that's important for a couple of reasons at least. One is to set expectations. Two, as we said, one of the key responsibilities of the product manager is customer collaboration, listening to the customers. That only works if the customer is available. So, for example, if you're doing Scrum and we are doing a sprint review at the end of each sprint, and at the sprint review, our customers don't show up, what's the value of that? Yes, we can demo to maybe an internal stakeholder or something like that, but that's not the point, right? We want to get feedback. The point of the sprint review is to get feedback from the actual users of the application, so we can iterate on that. And so there is a responsibility on the customer themselves to whatever the customer is. It could be an internal stakeholder, it could be a user, it could be a paying customer, whatever the definition of the customer is. The people that receive the value from the work that the product team is doing, there is a responsibility of these people to participate and provide feedback. It's in their interest in them.
Okay. How does the Tiramisu method help with release planning for those customers or managers that want a release plan and a forecast for what can be delivered when?
Yes, totally aligned. I think the one misconception of agile is that there is no planning in agile. And this, I think, is a big misconception. There is actually a lot of planning, probably even more planning in agile than in traditional methods. It just happens at different levels. It happens at on a daily basis with the daily Scrum. It happens on a sprint basis with the sprint planning, for example. It happens at the release level with the release plan. It happens at the longer term with the roadmap, with the product journey map, with the portfolio backlog, and all these kind of things. So all of these are different ways to plan a product, whether short term or long term. The point is going back to one of the agile values, responding to change over following a plan. The plans are very good, they're very important, very useful, but regardless if it is a short-term or long-term plan, we want to have a mindset where we can rapidly adjust our plan as we learn more. So respond to change. And in essence, when you think about the tiramisu, when the product manager really covers the three responsibilities and there's a good balance between the three, that employs a quick, rapid iteration cycle, you're basically allowing the product manager to have a plan and to quickly adjust the plan whenever they learn something new.
And we did get some more information on a previous question. The question is there an idealistic percentage of amount of money that should be invested during discovery?
Oh, I see. Like if you have an X amount of budget, how much do you want to spend on that? I don't have a good answer. I don't know of a good answer. And what I would think, and that's my instinct telling me that when we start thinking about bucketing budgets into the different dimensions, different activities we want to do, we are thinking we risk falling into a waterfall mindset. The reason is, let's say I give 10% of my budget to discovery, and then during discovery, I figure out that whatever idea I was having is not a good idea. Now what do? I ran out of budget and I don't have any extra money. What do I do? So there needs to be some flexibility there to adjust and spend more time in discovery if needed and these kind of things, right?
Do you recommend using the MVP concept even in features added after the initial product rollout?
Yes, totally, because the next time you need to expand your product, you may have an underlying hypothesis of what is needed, what is important for your customers. You may build an MVP to validate that.
Okay, I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. This question here is, should a product owner and the Scrum Master be technically adept?
So I always say this, knowing your technical space doesn't hurt. It certainly puts you in a better space, right? So you can talk intelligently to your team and so on. But knowing the technical stuff is not the responsibility of either the product manager nor the Scrum Master. They don't need to. They can rely on the development team if they don't have the technical skill set. In the end, the responsibility of the development team is to manage the how, and really the responsibility of the product owner, product manager is to manage the what and the why. So understanding the customers and translating those needs for the development team.
Okay, and we'll do one more question and then the rest we'll follow up on in a future post. Is there a limit to the number of MVPs you can have on a product?
I would not say so. No, in theory, your product could be a continuous discovery. As you grow, as you build, and as you expand, it could be a continuous discovery. Now, maybe the next thing you develop is no longer like a minimum viable product. It could be a minimum viable feature because now you're validating just a small portion of that. But still, that idea that once you have launched a product in market, the product is done, that's not true, right? Your product is always growing and is always adapting. So that mindset is always true. Keep understanding your customer needs, keep ideating, keep validating your hypotheses.
Fantastic. Valerio and Jorgen, thank you both so much for a wonderful presentation. And thank you all so much for your engagement today and the thoughtful questions. Please remember that you can access the comparative agility tools that were discussed today through your membership dashboard if you're a Scrum Alliance certificate holder. And please, we'd love to hear your feedback about today's presentation. So if you can complete the survey afterwards, we would really appreciate that. I went ahead and shared our contact information in the chat box. So if you have additional questions or want to reach out, please feel free to do so. And the recording will be shared on the Scrum Alliance website in the coming days. So please feel free to check that out and share that as well. Thank you again for joining us today, and mark your calendars for the next webinar in this series. It'll be on July 14th. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.